Why is it that two people can experience the same injustice, yet only one of them ends up consumed by hate? Why does one person turn their anger into protest or reform, while another turns theirs into hostility toward an entire group? These aren't just questions of personality or morality. They reveal something deeper about how we interpret harm. In particular, they point to the critical role of bias, not just as a static belief, but as an active force shaping how anger is processed and where it gets directed. In the structure we're calling a selective misfire, legitimate anger is the starting point. It arises from something real, a betrayal, a loss, a perceived injustice. Anger, on its own, is neither good nor bad. It's a signal. It alerts us to the fact that something in the world isn't right, and it prepares us to act. But what determines how we act? That's where bias comes in. Bias, in this context, functions like a filter or lens. It offers ready-made explanations for who's to blame. These explanations often come preloaded from cultural narratives, media, or past experience. When anger arises, bias gives it shape. Instead of channeling anger toward the actual cause, often complex or systemic, bias directs it toward convenient, familiar targets. The result is a kind of emotional misfire. The feeling is legitimate, but the target is distorted. Once anger is misdirected, the next step in this progression is hate. Hate forms when anger is sustained over time and focused on a group or identity rather than a situation or behavior. It simplifies. It hardens. And crucially, it feels justified, because the anger that birthed it was justified. The original legitimacy of the emotion cloaks the bias-fueled hate in a sense of righteousness. But here's the key insight. If bias isn't present, this trajectory never completes. Someone might still feel anger, but without bias to redirect it, that anger is more likely to lead to inquiry, connection, or constructive action. This triad structure shows us that hate is not an automatic consequence of being hurt. It's a consequence of how we interpret that hurt, and whether we allow bias to point us toward enemies instead of solutions. Disrupting the selective misfire means interrupting the role of bias in shaping emotional response. That might involve teaching media literacy, encouraging more nuanced thinking about causality, or creating social spaces where diverse perspectives are not just present, but felt. It also means helping people learn to sit with their anger long enough to ask, what exactly am I angry about? And who told me where to point that anger? When people are given tools to explore their emotions without rushing to judgment, they become harder to radicalize and better equipped to turn pain into meaningful change.